Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as fuck.
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor, with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. This is an episode that wasn't actually meant to be an episode. Recently here in Australia, we celebrated ANZAC Day. And for those in our global audience who don't know what that means, ANZAC stands for Australian New Zealand Army Corps. And ANZAC Day is a commemoration day held on the anniversary of the landing of Australian New Zealand troops at Gallipoli in Turkey on the 25th of April 1915. ANZAC Day is a huge remembrance day, not just of Gallipoli in World War I, but it also honours any Australian presence in any war across the globe. All who served or lost their lives are remembered at a dawn service commemoration across Australia and New Zealand. This year, Liz went to the dawn service and she put a post on Facebook saying that she'd had a huge spiritual experience. Now, Liz and I hadn't spoken that day, but her post on Facebook triggered something deep in me also. So the following day, I called Liz, we had a quick chat about it, and I could just feel that she could not put into words what she had experienced. She was giving me little snippets of information, but it was like she was really grappling with how to articulate it. So I suggested we get together and that I interview her about what she went through. Again, this was not meant to be a podcast episode. We did record the session, however, but the intention was for me to help Liz process through something profound that she had experienced and for her to capture this moment in time for her own records. So what you're about to hear is a very privileged peek into two friends supporting each other through some of the crazy moments that we have on this spiritual roller coaster. Through our conversation, some really huge messages and personal insights came through for both of us as our conversation took us from Gallipoli to England, to Normandy to Belgium, to Ireland and Cambodia. You don't need to be an Australian or a Kiwi from New Zealand. The insights and messages in this episode are universal. I am so deeply grateful to Liz for her trust in me and in you, our listeners. And so I invite you to listen with an open heart and hold space for Liz as she processes through her profound spiritual experience on ANZAC Day. Oh gosh. Okay. Deep breath.
Deep breath. Well, not a recording, just a conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, like, I know we had a quick chat yesterday, but for me, I don't know why it was going to be, but it was almost like when we're going through spiritual stuff, it's all in our head a lot of the time that we're not necessarily verbalizing it. And sometimes it's just helps that if you have someone that you can process something out loud with, it's not necessarily that they're going to figure anything out for you, but just even to hear yourself or be asked questions, ends up that you process it, or you think, oh, I didn't realize that, or I didn't think of that, or oh, now something comes to mind. And for me, I just felt that whatever you had experienced just seemed to be something so huge that,
oh God.
Yeah, because it's not like we spent long talking about it yesterday. It was just
Okay.
So. Okay, let's start from the beginning and just, whatever comes to mind, just tell me. I know you had a spiritual experience and I knew it from seeing a post on Facebook, but what occurred for you on ANZAC Day?
The story starts actually for me not on ANZAC Day.
Okay, yeah. Go wherever it takes us, yeah. because this is not meant to be a podcast.
Okay.
That's not the intention behind
All right,
it.
that makes me feel better, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange because even though I've been in Australia for over 20 years,
Mhm.
I have never once wanted to go to an ANZAC Day remembrance ever.
Yes. Yeah.
Not for any reason, not that I'm not respectful or I wouldn't want to go and pay my respects. I've just never felt drawn to. And personally don't have, a military connection or, anyone that's ever really been involved in the war. Actually, there've been people, ancestors
Yeah.
or people
Yeah.
in the family, but I don't know, I've just never been drawn to it. And there's been people in my family, my husband's family, that just go religiously every single year and have, asked us many, many times to go and do the dawn service. But for whatever reason, it's just never felt right. A couple of weeks ago, out of nowhere, I just got this bee in my bonnet, as I say. All of a sudden, I have to go to the dawn service. I have to take my son to the dawn service. That was what came into my mind. I have to take him, which I didn't really think too much of. It was strong. It was like, this is what we're doing. I said to my husband, I'm going to get him up. It doesn't matter about the time. I'm going to take him down to the dawn service.
So can I ask, just was it just specifically to your son, or was it your son and daughter? And was it something that came out of school? Because kids were told, bring them, because I always feel guilty if I don't do it with my daughter. But it's a school driven thing. So it was more than that for you, though. It was more.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. He'd not mentioned it. It was nothing, but I feel like maybe by using him, that was the push. I don't know if I would have gone on my own. But when I mentioned it to my husband, he was really like, all right, well, let's all go. I was like, great.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, I also found out my friends were going. So, I had this plan of action. Great. I'm going to get up at this time. We're going to go and meet my friends and we're going to go and do the dawn service. The night before, I started to think, my rational mind, it's been school holidays. My son starts school the next day. He's had a couple of really early mornings. He's going to be way too tired. It's a really bad idea that I wake him up at like 4:45. So I actually text my friend at like 9:00 at night saying, look, I don't think we're going to be coming. Went to sleep. Zero intention of waking up. No alarm set. Then at 4:45 or 4:50, I sat up in bed, looked at the clock, and I was absolutely wide awake.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Now, not only that, my husband woke up at the same time and he's like, what are you doing? Why have you woken up? And I'm like, I'm wide awake. I'm going to go and wake him up. And my husband was like, are you sure? He's going to be really tired. But I went and got my clothes on. I was like, I'm getting up. So because I'd committed then, he went and got ready and all of the family got up. We're like, okay, we're going to the service. And that was that. We jumped in the car and headed down in a very, very dark 5 a.m. Morning to park into town to do the walk into Torquay, where we live, where the service is actually held at this beautiful cliff top and a place called Point Danger.
Okay.
Yeah. So, again, didn't think too much of it on the journey down there, but I guess the experience for me started the moment of getting out of the car. So getting out of the car, there were already lots and lots of people. I was surprised, all on this walk, which is actually along the beachfront all the way down to the cliffs. So I guess, being a person that feels energy, like the energy is already quite somber, there's obviously people already thinking about ANZAC Day, but I can feel that energy straight away. And obviously it's a bit more intense for me anyway.
Yeah.
So it started off with just how I normally feel energy. If I'm walking into a really happy place, I'm definitely more attuned to picking that up. And the same with walking into a sad situation. Except as I'm on this walk, this emotion exploded. It was almost like I could feel it rising up my body, and the sadness started to bubble, and And he was almost like, holding a magnifying glass to it. It was really starting to get intense for me, and grief started to come in, and oh God, I was just so emotional. So I'm walking and I'm holding my kids' hands and I'm looking at my husband and I'm trying to act like nothing's wrong. But I'm feeling these intense waves of feelings that are coming from, doesn't really feel from inside, actually. It feels from everybody around me. It's from everything around me. And every step closer towards the cliffs that I got, the feelings just intensified that little bit more. And it was to the point where I was doing whatever it took to keep the tears down, because my rational mind was like, bloody hell, what's everyone going to
Yes.
think if I suddenly start crying and I'm just walking there,
Yeah. And especially I think when you don't have a direct association with it, like, yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
And it's funny because, in that type of scenario, you start to feel like I can't cry because I'm going to be like a fraud.
Yes.
How can
Yeah.
I cry? I've got no sad story behind this event. I'm an English person in an Australian ceremony, blah, de, blah, de, blah. I guess all of those type of things go through your head.
I get that, because the amount of times that has happened to me on things that I think, this is not my story. Why am I getting upset? I'm, and sometimes it's at funerals of someone that I don't know that well. And then I get overwhelmed because I'm feeling that collective emotion in the room. But I kind of get the sense from you that what you were feeling wasn't just the collective energy of everybody who was there, like the physical people who were there. Was it, so if you think about it, that okay, you can sense the energy of the people who were around you, and yes, it is a solemn occasion, and it's mixed with a lot of pride as well, because I think for Australians it's there's a lot of pride in the duty and the service, but also that sense of respect and just grief for a lot of people as well. But do you think that what you were feeling was just the people surrounding you immediately, or were there the souls of the departed that were part of it?
So on the walk there, I'd say it's really hard to answer at that particular point. Although it was super overwhelming for me,
Yeah.
I didn't go past the point of, oh, holy shit, this must just be because I'm really sensitive to energy at this stage.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any more than that for me at that point.
Yeah.
But what happened then when I got to the remembrance, that's kind of when everything changed for me. So yeah, the dawn service started. There was actually a lot of people there. I was so surprised. It was, actually really incredible to be there at that event anyway, regardless of all this crap happening to me. But there were hundreds and hundreds of people, stood with my family. And as the soldier on the stage started to talk, I was suddenly aware of somebody being with me. And the shocking thing for me was that I instantly knew that it was my grandma. Actually, she was called my nanny.
Yeah.
She was my nanny.
Yeah.
Evelyn, who passed away when I was quite young. I was probably a teenager, I believe. But I just always loved her so much. I felt her with me, and which was shocking for me, actually. Like, why is my grandma suddenly, or my nanny actually here with me at an ANZAC Day event? But that was answered really quickly. And what happened next was, in what might be like a flash of just a quick thought, I was explained everything just in a flash. And she showed me really quickly that, and thanked me very quickly for going, and told me that actually I came for her. She was the reason that I was at that event that morning. And she stood, and I could feel it almost like it was me, like I was her. And I could feel her energy in me as well as around me. And it was almost like I was standing so proud, paying my respects as her. And she showed me this point in her life where she was kneeling in front of the grave of her husband that lost his life in the Second World War. And she was showing me that she didn't get to pay her respects until years after losing him. Whereas an adult, she eventually took the trip over to Normanby where his grave was. And for the first time in her life, years and years and years after that, after losing him, did she get to pay her respects. So suddenly I was there at that grave with her, and she showed me everything. It was almost like just consecutive flashes of images and memories of everything that just explained why she was there for me, or with me. She showed me the anguish, and I felt this at the core of everything, the anguish and the sadness of her looking out the window, looking out the door, not knowing where he was, having 2 children, and being incredibly strong every single day just to get on with life. And then she showed me afterwards how her life looked as a single mum in that period. And then she showed me, unbelievably, her husband giving her this set of pearls that just made her feel so happy. And those are the pearls that I have recently got from my family that have been passed down to me. So this big connection of these pearls, and suddenly seeing the story play out of how she received these pearls from him, how important they were. And now I have those pearls, which just made it a whole lot more special.
That's so special. Special is the word I'm thinking, because it is that direct connection to her feeling and her sensation of receiving them and what it meant to her. Like, it's not just a piece of jewelry, it's not just a family heirloom, you're directly connected to a feeling.
It was beautiful. And what happened almost at that point, so that was, I mean, you can imagine I'm already in this super overwhelming energetic state. My nanny comes in, I'm crying, this is all happening. And I look at my husband, and he just kind of gives me a look like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'll just tell you later.
He knows at this stage, it's like, you're lucky he's
he knows not to go past that.
Yeah. It's a Liz moment.
I'm tears running down me, and at the same time I'm scared to lose the connection I've got, so I don't want anything to break the connection, because I'm in it and it's special and I can feel my nanny, and that in itself is just so incredible, because I don't get that very often. So I keep her with me, but as fast as that thought ran through my mind, like I want to keep her with me, I felt her energetically step to the side. So energy kind of whooshed through me, and I could feel her still on my left arm. But at that point, suddenly, almost as if like a veil is taken away from you, I can feel hundreds and hundreds of the souls of soldiers, their families, stood around me. Through the crowd, I can feel it, I can see it, I can hear their thoughts. All stood paying their respects around the crowd, doing exactly what we are all there doing at exactly the same time, just as one. Now that was something else. And again, there were so many mixed feelings here.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. It's like, well, what is it? Like, this is the coach in me coming out, so describe the what was it? Can you describe it?
It started off as everything all at the same time. I could feel and see in my mind's eye the soldiers stood dotted around. I could also sense a whole wave of emotions, from sadness, grief, happiness, pride, courage, bravery, all of these collectively at the same time. But then what started to happen was I was drawn to specific soldiers. I was having flashes of not only what they were thinking while they were stood in the crowd, but I was then brought back to what they were thinking in the situation of that day, in no particular order. So, as an example, first, there was a man with me that had one of his limbs missing, and he was remembering sitting on the boat going into Gallipoli.
Yeah.
And he was showing me the fear that he had. Yeah, the fear, I could witness him tossing and turning in bed. He was really embarrassed that he was scared. And it was almost like he was showing me his friends, and they were courageous and strong, and, they were doing it for their country, yet he wasn't, and he was just petrified, and he just wanted to be at home, and he just wanted to be with his mum. And then I was seeing, these other soldiers and standing there just feeling that absolute 100% dedication and commitment to doing whatever it took for the country, with zero fear of dying. Zero. They just, with this attitude of, this is what we need to do for the lives of our family. And then I was seeing, soldiers before actually going out to fight. And again, I don't know the scenarios here or even which battle as such. Yeah. I'm not even saying this may have been exactly connected to ANZAC Day. It felt like a whole lot of soldiers actually in different situations.
And we think of ANZAC Day as, yes, it is remembrance of Gallipoli, but it's so much more than that. Like, I mean, it is like every person who has ever served, every, military person today, everybody is honored in that. It's so much broader than Gallipoli itself. So yeah, I'm sure so many people had on their mind, it's just such a day of remembrance and respect. So it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that it wasn't specific to Gallipoli or Anzac Cove.
And I really got that sense of different moments in time.
Yeah.
With all of the souls stood around me, very much in different military uniforms, different times. Like, there was some type of connection with Vietnam that I felt at one point. There was some connection with the World War I, World War II. There were different souls with different cultural backgrounds. It really was a mix of different people that I was feeling in different situations. But I was, hearing the thoughts of the breakfast before the fight, of the fun that they'd have, but also the mental anguish that was beneath the surface for them, and the putting on the brave face. So it was just this crazy, it's really hard to put into words. Actually.
Of course. And that was honestly, when we just had that short chat yesterday, it was like, and you said, and it was so much more than that. In that moment, I just thought, well, it helps you process through, well, what did happen? And like, in my mind, I'm thinking here, it's like, well, how long? Like, this is the logical part of me as well. How long did that take? Was that over 2 minutes? Was it, did it all happen instantaneously? Because I get the sense from you as you're talking about it, that it's all happening at once. You can't put a timeline on things like this. They happen, and you're overwhelmed, and it's everything happening at once.
It was so much at once, yet for me it felt like it could have been happening for an hour. That because there was so much going on. So it was that instant, but not. But I would think that if I were to put some type of time on it, it was probably 15 to 20 minutes of me being in that super emotional state. So it was a good amount of time. And actually what broke me out of that was my daughter pulling my hands, telling me she needed a wee. Like, okay,
back to reality, Mum.
Tears. But I also think that was really meant to be as well.
Absolutely. It pulls you back, because otherwise you can get lost in that. I imagine that it's things happen for a reason.
It pulled me out of it, but also what happened next was just super magical for me as well. At that point, I'd started to go into the place of trying to work it out. What's going on? Oh my God, this is too much. I do want to say this was not a sad experience. This was a beautiful, incredible experience that I'm really grateful for. I mean, wow, how lucky am I to be able to experience something like that? But at this point, I then waded through the crowds, thinking I've got to take my daughter to the toilet. Oh my God. Tried to get through, and ended up finding this toilet, and this toilet ended up being actually on the beach. Now, by this point, the sun started to rise, and the sunrise was the most red and orange sunrise over the sea that you've ever seen. And I started to walk along the grass on the top of the beach. And, there were people dotted around, sat on the beach. They can hear the ceremony as well from the cliffs. There's people in kayaks watching the sunset, listening to the ceremony. And as I walk there, I just stood and tell my daughter just to stand. The bugle starts to play.
Oh gosh.
And
And
it was
that's
the
so
most hauntingly beautiful place to be, to then just have that silence, to just download what happened to me and just pay my respects at that point and thank whatever happened, whoever came to me during that moment, and my nanny for allowing me to experience honestly what it was like for people, because I was there when that was happening. That's how it felt.
I knew this would happen. I could feel it building. And again, like I could have closed myself off to your energy before we started chatting. And I thought, no, I wanna. So I could feel a lot of what you were saying there. But you're talking about the experience of watching the sunrise out over the beach. And like I went to Gallipoli, God, I think it was like 96, 97 now. And like I didn't go on a pilgrimage. It actually, I don't want this to sound disrespectful, but it didn't mean anything to me. Like, I mean, I didn't even know, it wasn't a place where I was planning to go. But that looking out, like from ANZAC Cove, being up on that height, looking out over the ocean. So when you were talking about, I'm thinking, oh my God, what the most perfect moment to be able to process all of this, because that is, where, like for Gallipoli, the ANZAC Cove, that is where this occurred. So just that was your processing moment of the, almost like the quiet before the battle, or the quiet after it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to actually post the video with the sound, because I very quickly pulled out my phone because it was so magical, and I wanted to actually just record that moment in time for myself. To be able to go back to it afterwards. The message around this for me, since, actually I've not thought about it. I haven't thought about it all, but I think internally I've been processing and just allowing myself to sit with what happened, was all of those souls that stood there that day, just this feeling of being together, this incredible moment of healing together from this side and that side. With whatever you believe, different dimensions, in heaven or whatever, everybody was there for the same reason and with the same message. And the gratitude that I felt for every human stood in that crowd from the other side as well was actually really incredible. It was almost like respect for everybody continuing to recognize the commitment that everybody gave to get us where we are today. Like, that feeling was how it ended for me. And that was the message, the pride that all those souls had for us all standing there at that moment.
I just like hearing you say that. And this is why yesterday I just felt to talk about this. There's a message in it somewhere. And I felt like there was a message for you, and there's a message for other people, and whether that gets shared on a post, whether it gets but even just to stop and acknowledge, because when we have spiritual stuff happen to us, it happens inside our own heads, and we don't always, or we might journal about it, but we're kind of limited to what are the questions we're going to ask ourselves, or what are the things that come into our own head. Whereas when you have someone else ask you those things, but playing back to you, and again, I'm someone who has no real connection with Anzac Day. I've done a couple of dawn services, and I do feel I know in my own sense of energy as well, they are spiritual experiences. They are, and that collective intention that everybody, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their backgrounds, everybody is there in a solemn state of respect. The bugle, there's just anyone, it's just another example too of how people are, we are all tuned into energy. No one can go to an event like that and not be moved in some way energetically. But I think to be able to, sometimes you wonder if that, because it's further and further back in history, that connection that gets kind of, it's another generation away, and encouraging our kids to go and be part of it. And even, war is never a thing to be glorified, or it is never a thing that, that that maybe as we get more spiritual, we kind of distance ourselves from, but it takes the good and the bad. And it is, the courage, the fear that each one of those soldiers had to go through. And of course, all of the, the periphery of people that have gone through that as well. But there is so much in the collective acknowledgement of that, true to form, least we forget, that it is, I feel like that's what I take away from your message. It is, we say that, we put it on posts, it's, that there are these emblems of remembrance. So whether you're in the UK and it's the poppy, or in Ireland, if it's, your Easter lily, there are emblems and things, but sometimes the emotion, the connection to that moment is lost. I think you were given that experience to be able to tie all of that together. Like, it's just such a profound experience, but as you say, not one of just sadness. It seems so much more than that.
Oh, yeah, it was really around the coming together. As I'm talking as well, what I'm also, I guess, getting is that there was something around time, as in human time, being a very limited thing. And time only exists for humans in this linear way. Whereas over the other side, that's actually not what it is. And we can all be joined at these particular points, and we can all go back emotionally and feel into these times and be with someone, connect with our families that have passed over, bring these people through. It doesn't matter how long they've been gone for. You can bring them there by simply calling them in. And yeah, there was some type of message around that for me as well.
Yeah, it's funny because the day that, Anzac Day, you put up a post and I just stumbled across it on Facebook, I think it was, but your post, and I knew by the way you'd written it that it was a hugely spiritual experience. But you triggered in me a thinking, and I think of it every Anzac Day. I think about when I visited Gallipoli. And no, the reason I went to Gallipoli was I was actually going to Troy, the ruins of Troy that are in Turkey. So for me, I was there on an archaeological ancient civilizations thing, but the bus happened to be stopping off at Gallipoli and I did not know what it was. So when I went there, I was like, oh, and I have this aversion to war. Like I was like, no, I don't think I want to go there. And energetically, I could feel it. I wouldn't have thought that at the time, but I could feel the presence of the place. But when I went there, and this is what your post brought me back to, was the memory of how spiritual an experience that was for me. Like that I felt the souls. I felt like nowhere near, like not in the realm of what you're experiencing, but I definitely had this huge experience of not just imagining what people were going through, but I could actually feel it and feel the collective energy, because the bus was full of Australians and Kiwis, that they were the people that were on this pilgrimage, which it was to them. But I cried, and not only did I cry at that, it was for the Turks, like for the Turkish people who'd lost their lives, because there's a huge big Ataturk has this huge big statement that was put up about Australian sons are ours. Basically, like I can't remember the exact quote, but it was basically saying that we embrace Australia and New Zealand sons, that you're now here in our home. And that, like, I just felt, oh my God, that was such a huge thing. That broke me. I just felt overwhelmed with all of the energy for it. But your post on that day, I spent so much time in reflection about Gallipoli and going back through what I'd experienced there. But also because Easter time, the lead up to Easter, and in Ireland is a huge memorial remembrance time as well for the Easter 1916 Rising. So I was already, like, say, watching some things online, a lot of new, friends and family who were paying their respects back home. And again, I have never, this is a terrible thing for an Irish person to say, but I have never felt a massively emotional connection to it until last year and this year. There's something in that collective healing and processing of grief. And when you did speak to me about it yesterday, all I could think of was, it was like as if you were processing grief on behalf of the collective, like what you were experiencing. I think yesterday I even used the word transmute to you. It was like, it felt like whatever you were going through, that you were channeling all of this energy, but in a restorative, and you were processing it on behalf of, whether it was the souls, whether it was the people that were around you. But that was where a lot of the sense of healing. So yes, you experienced it, but I do feel that you were a conduit or a channel in a broader sense for what was happening on that day. And you may not have felt that, but that was absolutely how I felt, that you were there for a reason that was needed on that particular day at that particular point in time. Yes, for your nanny, but it was bigger than that. It was like twofold. It was like, yeah, I'm here for my nanny, but I'm also here for that bigger collective, which I think is becoming a more and more of a theme for you as well, just collective energy. But it's, yeah, there was something massively profound in it.
And I think looking back now, as you're saying that, it was almost like my nanny had to come through first to kind of give me the message of, as well, actually, you do have a tie.
Yes. And we all do in some, yeah. And that also, there's a safety factor I felt in that too. It was like, you know, to allow you to open up, to be able to process all of this on behalf of others. It's like, if you didn't have that trust and that warmth and that loving feeling, look at the two of us now, you know?
Yeah, that's true, because when she did move aside, it was a whoosh of faces, actually. If you can imagine suddenly seeing 30 to 50 faces coming towards you and flashing in your mind very quickly, like that was what happened automatically as she stood aside. So it was almost like she kind of acted a little bit as a shield to start with, and bringing me into that gently before she stepped aside and allowed me to experience and feel all of the other souls that were also stood on that same ground.
Oh my God, what an experience. And now that you're, you know, so many days after it, how do you feel about it now? Like, how does it feel looking back about it, or even the fact that you've talked it through?
In some ways, it just doesn't even feel like it's happened, and I'm really grateful that we're recording this as a bit of a place that I can keep this story.
A moment in time. It is.
That moment in time, because I can never recapture those exact feelings again. Maybe I can. I'll be interested now to see if that ever happens to me again.
Yeah. And I felt, for me, that was the most important thing. That was why I suggested it. It's like, it doesn't matter whether this goes to anyone else. It doesn't matter whether you shared this with anyone. It doesn't matter even if you never listen back to this. There's something in the processing or verbalizing, like giving words to the emotions, to the experience, to all of the things that had happened. And, you know, I imagine you can't remember everything from the experience, but when you're talking, it triggers another thought, or it spills into that. Because even what you said about your mum and dad, the healing that you gifted them, because yes, emotional stuff came up for them, but for them to have that, and it is a spiritual connection, like it is that connection to their family, to people that they have loved, that, you know, sometimes we, you know, with grief, we feel like we lose a little bit of the connection. And then even, you know, the ancestral, like the more degrees were removed from a grandparent or a great grandparent, that connection is more, you know, less and less, unless we're really tapping into it at a point in time. And I felt like, even in your message, oh God, this is me feeling the collective energy now, but there's a gift in anyone who hears about this, however you choose to tell it, if you choose to tell it, but there is a gift for other people in them taking a moment in these busy lives that we have to just sit and connect back to an ancestor. And it doesn't matter whether it was someone who served in the war, whether it was specifically Gallipoli, whether it is, you know, there's been wars the world over. We all have people or someone who was impacted in some way. So just being able to have that moment to imagine, and even if that's all they think about it, that it's just that they're imagining, but there is a spiritual connection that comes with that, and be open to it, that just, at least we forget.
Wow.
Oh my God. Is there anything else that you, like, again, more for this moment in time, or to honor for yourself? Is there anything else that's going through your head that you want to capture for yourself, whether it's for you specifically, for your family, for anyone else? Is there anything that's in your head or your heart right now that you just want to say?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, I just, in some ways, just really wish that other people could experience that, in so many different ways. So I don't know. Nothing is right there to share, to be honest. I just feel like it will, yeah, probably the story just needed to be told and everyone will take something from it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, and I think just at the moment, energetically, there's so many changes for a lot of people happening with being more receptive and open to energy, getting curious about maybe what happens when you die. What does life after death actually look like? And the more evidence that I get personally with every connection that I have, the more excited I am, number one, about what's after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the less scared I am about what's after.
Yeah.
So, which I think is really comforting. After this, just to actually share one more story, I really had the craziest dreams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had really
After, before, when?
afterwards.
Afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
after this, the last couple of nights, I've had really crazy dreams, and they've all been around meeting guides, my spirit guides, and it's
Oh,
almost like I've been surrounded at night by a collection of ancestors. That is exactly how it has felt. I don't have much recollection from the dreams, but I've woke both mornings knowing that there's been a hell of a lot of people working with me on something while I've been asleep.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I have no idea what that may have been, but there's been a sense of calm, and a sense of everything's just going to be okay for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think I'm just reflecting right now on what have I taken, because I do feel that we had a spiritual slash emotional connection throughout all of this, because I'd seen your post, because it caused me to think back about my trip to Gallipoli. It also caused me to reflect on I guess the pain that is in Ireland, like as in, with all of the troubles that have existed there. And that's something that's been weighing on me quite heavily, even though I didn't grow up with that being front of mind for me. But the so much of what you've said, that kind of sense of oneness, of coming together in respect, the sense of healing that comes with that, but also and we spoke about this on the previous episode or another episode about the energy of places.
Yeah.
So the fact that, number one, you'd mentioned about your nanny not feeling that she'd really processed her grief until she was able to go back to Normandy. Like, and I get that some people that might feel like a tick in the box or something that you just need to do, but there is some, it was like me going to Gallipoli. I had no emotional connection to it. I was going to see something completely different, but it was put in my path. And at that point in time, I wasn't heading to Australia. Like that wasn't necessarily on my list of things to do. But the memory that is locked into places and the
Mm.
energy from, particularly major events that occur, that the energy is held there. And if it's a case of going to those places in that state of respect or pilgrimage to process your grief, that helps process, I believe, helps process on behalf of every soul that was part of that, as well as your own kind of ancestral lineage, as well as you, the individual. So, for anyone who may feel that there is a pilgrimage, there is, like, you don't just look at it that, oh, lots of people go to the Kokoda Trail if you're in Australia, or they go to Gallipoli. It's like, no, there's actually a very big healing power and a very big, almost like soul call to go and do these things on behalf of those who have gone before
Mm.
you. And like your nanny coming in to guide you through that, but also to show you her experience of that how it was so important for her to go back, plus those pearls. It's like there is energy, there is emotions, there's a spiritual connection to those pearls as well. Like I just feel that there are so many things where energy gets, I don't want to use the word trapped because it's not trapped, but it's
It's there.
concentrated. It's there, absolutely.
And I just want
So
to say to anyone listening or anyone that overhears this story that really pay attention to how you feel in a place, because you can go to a site, that's had a tragedy there, or, there's trauma locked into the land there, and you might feel sad, but you don't really go deeper than that. You don't allow yourself to explore, well, actually, where am I feeling this? What is this about? Are you getting any type of flashes? Are you thinking, are there any random thoughts coming in now? Like, this, most of the time when you're in a place that holds a lot of energy, things happen to you, but you just don't give it a second thought.
Yeah.
And we are all connected, or we can all be connected with the land. And I think the more people that can stand and allow that to come up for them actually does help that land process that healing, and and move that stuck energy through, allow it to come through you and move on, and experience history. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that energetic connection to the land and processing healing through for the land and the people, like, for me, that is a massive thing. Like, I probably can't articulate it very well yet, but it is something that I have felt my whole life. And now, through the experience of talking to you about this and hearing how you're processing it, just, the gift almost that your nanny has given me, just saying, yes, that there is something in standing in a place in a moment in time. And again, not just on behalf of yourself, but allowing the land, allowing the people, those who have gone before you. There's so much stuff that if you allow that to flow through you, not necessarily to hold on to it. It's actually to let it process through you. Yeah.
And actually, that explains to me what you've just said. Why, when I'm talking about it and thinking about it now, I can't necessarily grasp the exact feeling of it anymore, because it did move through me.
Yeah.
So a lot of me is quite sad that I can't feel that now.
But I feel that was why. And again, you only described it for such a short period of time, but my sense of knowing was, this is transmutation. It needed to pass through you for you to be able to process it on behalf of the collective, because I feel that. And what's coming to mind for me is when I was in Belgium, this is years ago, I had to go over to do an audit in a company that I was working for. So they'd flown me in from Australia, going in and doing this audit. But every day I had to pass from where I was staying past a concentration camp. Like, and there was the signs.
Wow.
But I remember at the time thinking to myself, I wanted to go there, but I also didn't want to go there. I wanted to go there because I felt that to go and honor those who'd lost their lives, the terrible, terrible things that had happened. But I didn't think that I was strong enough. Now, looking at it in this moment, thinking, it's like, I realize that I wouldn't have been able to let it process through me, flow through me. I would have carried some of that energy. So we talk about energetic cleansing and, letting energy, cleanse through you, not, whether it's a mediumship reading, whether it's a coaching client, that we don't take on other people's trauma. We don't take on other people's energy. Or if you do, you've got to explicitly disconnect from that. And now I realize that allowing energy to pass through you is healing. That is what's helpful. That is what's healing, both for you and for the, for the land and for the people that have gone before. It just feels like your experience, how you have explained it to me, has unlocked so many things for me. It's like, okay. And anytime I try to hold on to the feeling, that is not necessarily serving. Or if I get a fear factor of, no, I'm not going to be. And at that point in time, it was like, I didn't think my mental health would have been up to not, like, I would have just rolled around in those stories and taken them on board and would have felt so awful on behalf of it. I knew I wasn't emotionally strong enough. But now I feel, no matter where I would go, to just be more conscious about processing energy through me, letting it flow is...
You really just... Can I share something?
Please, that's the whole point.
I've shared in the past a couple of experiences that I've had in Cambodia, because I've massively drawn there. I've worked there for 6 years. In fact, my other business, Project Gen Z, is is there because of my passion and pull to the land of Cambodia.
Yes.
So for 5-6 years, I go over there every single year, and I run workshops with orphans there, and I take over entrepreneurs. And the whole trip is really giving everyone the opportunity to experience the culture, to start to understand the history of what the people of Cambodia have gone through. And for anyone that doesn't know, the stuff that has happened in Cambodia is just even next level. You know, a third of the population of adults were killed in the Pol Pot era. So when I actually go there every year, even though it's absolutely horrible, I always take my attendees to S21, which is the genocide prison and the killing fields, where, you know, thousands and thousands of children, babies, and adults were slaughtered in this incredibly horrendous genocide. And every year, you know, I have a massive reaction to it. The last time I went to Cambodia was before this spiritual awakening.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I know of myself that I've always been a huge feeler of energy.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, and I think I've mentioned something like this before, is that on every single trip to Cambodia, something happens to me. On every single trip, I've had a problem with my eyes.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yes, something happens, like my contact got stuck in the back of my eyes start to hurt, I can never see.
Yeah.
So I go on this trip and I go through this history, and I feel this horrendous, you know, all this pain and this anguish. And I felt it now, nowhere near as what happened to me the other day.
Yeah. But
I feel it, and it's horrible. And then I work with these children that have also experienced horrible things. And I always get severe back pain. And I'm just like crippled for like 4 days while I'm running these workshops. And I never, ever experienced back pain aside from the time I got to Cambodia. And the last time that I went was 2019 from memory, right before COVID. And I got back from Cambodia, and the weirdest thing happened. For some reason, my legs just stopped working, and I could not get out of bed. I couldn't go down my stairs. I had to shuffle on my bum. And I was like, what the absolute hell? It was weird. Like I was just stuck in one space. And just at this moment of you talking to me, have I realized that every single time I've gone to Cambodia, I've been sat with the trauma in my body, and I've not allowed it to go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what I'm going to be very curious and interesting to know or to feel moving forward is that in March next year, I'm running my grand finale trip to Cambodia to go and help another 100 kids over there. And I'll be doing the same type of trips, and I'm going to be interested to see what happens this time. And now being psychically open, whether or not that stops, whether or not I channel things in a different way, whether I have any spiritual experiences, I don't know, watch this space.
But it's, Liz, it's like, I just want to say, fuck, when you're saying this, because I do, again, what I feel in this is it's the healing energy, that the more you can process this, the more healing it is for the people and the land in that moment in time. And you talk about Cambodia. So Cambodia is another example of a place that I went to because it was, you know, an ancient civilization, wanted to go to Angkor Wat. So I did not go there for any other reason. And yes, I would have known some vague history of it, but of course you can't go to the country without, and you feel it. And again, I knew I could not go to some of those, you know, to the killing fields and to some of those sites that really I could feel it from a distance how much that was going to impact me. But again, I went there with the intention of, you know, like back further in time, but then being exposed to and feeling, but I knew that I could not process any of that energy. I would have taken it. I would have held on to it. It would not have served me. It definitely wouldn't have served anybody else. But yeah, there's definitely an episode when you come in, and I'm not even when you come back from Cambodia. I think it needs to be real raw in the moment, you know. So Liz,
I don't know whether to laugh or cry about this one.
What's going on? Tell us now. It's like going with a roving camera.
I'll be traveling with a suitcase of crystals.
But just fascinating. Like, I mean, because both of us, we started this conversation. It was not meant to be a podcast, but we thought we're going to record this just from a processing standpoint. But I just feel the talking out loud for both of us. We've both had aha moments as we've gone through this. We've both honored ancestors. We've both honored, everyone who has loved and lost someone, particularly in a war situation. The connection back to the energy of places and items, like just your grandma's pearls. It's like, you need to send me a photograph of that. I just feel like I want to see them. But yeah, it's all around us. And something you said yesterday that really hit me as well, because you mentioned about, when all of us went through COVID and we were in isolation, you mentioned about yesterday being, ANZAC Day being the day where you felt it was your first time in a lot of people for a long time. And it made me realize, shit, I've been like that too. So I was thinking that for me personally, it was more that I have chosen to be in hermit mode quite a bit since I've gone through my spiritual awakening. And some of that can be put down to, going through separation, just life stuff that's happening to me. But when you said that, I thought, oh my gosh, because I was supposed to go to an event in Ireland. It was a remembrance thing in January last year. And what I was worried about was exactly that, the collective grief, the collective hurt, the collective pain, the collective just energy of everybody who was in there. And I chose, I didn't choose not to go. I was supposed to go and it ended up not happening. And again, it was almost like a tester for me that you're not ready for that yet. You're going to hold on to too much of that. So there's just, for me, there's something that I need to sit with that's more got to do with that, the land, people, healing, and that's connectedness together. But there are some people, I believe, who are able to process pain, process trauma, process healing on behalf of other people. And I feel like that was what you were doing on that day.
Wow. I love that.
Oh, I definitely I do, because you brought it to your family as well. And we never know. Like, I mean, I'll put this back into mental health terms, but like when I'm a speaker and I go on stage and I talk about mental health, my one thing is like, if I can just touch one person in the audience, that's all I think of. But the amount of people who come back to me and, it could be ages later, they'll send me an email, send me a text message, they'll call me, send something, on LinkedIn, whatever it might be. I'm like, oh my God, we have no idea of our ripple effect. Now that's a very specific, like I'm verbalizing something, it's something someone's coming through, but energetically also, we just don't know the ripple effect that we're having on other people. But I do believe that in that moment on that day, because I felt it from Sydney through your Facebook post, and I know we have a connection anyway, but I just feel there was something hugely healing that you contributed to everyone around you on that day. And I just think that is how fucking amazing. Like, how special is that?
On that note, I'd love to leave everyone with one last thing.
Please do.
Because I'm hearing it now. If you decide to attend something like the dawn service or whatever it might be, the ancestors from your family are sharing their thank you for you going along to continue the remembrance of everyone at that time and what they went through.
I think that's it. Like, that is the most beautiful message.
Yeah, there's so much love. Like, that's really like, if I had to explain the feeling of everything that happened that day, that is it. It was that thank you. Like, that's what I could sense, that collective coming together, pride for everyone in the crowd. Like, thank you for coming together. Thank you for remembering us. Thank you for bringing us all together again.
Oh my God. It's like I'm in tears here now, but I think because, and I guess this is separate to what we were saying, but because of what I had been going through myself for the Easter remembrances in Ireland, like, and growing up, it was not like my family were not like, and it's actually not the norm. Like, I mean, the majority of families, similar to Australia, it's like you go, you do the dawn service, that's showing respect. But I think because there was such a political element in Ireland as well to all of that. But for me, this past 2 years, more so than ever, I feel more drawn and more connected and more in tune. And it hurts me to see the political agenda getting in the way of people healing, like that sense of just allow people to pay their respect, allow people to honor their dead, allow people to just reconnect. And because every time that you stop that from happening, it just means that it's another resistance, it just doesn't allow people. So just, no matter, like, I mean, in wars, there's always two sides. So no matter whose side, but just allow everybody to honor their own grief, to honor their remembrance, to honor their, the people who have gone before them, those people who were courageous to stand up for their beliefs and their,
and honor it with love. Like that's the feeling I had.
That, yes.
It didn't matter where somebody was from or who was in the right, who was wrong in the wrong. That was the
it
last
doesn't matter.
thing
No,
that was coming through. It was more around remembering, feeling, and acting with love, because we are all one.
Yeah,
that's simple.
Oh my gosh, I am so glad we had this conversation, because I think my intention was to do this for you. Like, I felt in my head, it was like, I feel like Liz needs this. You just need to get it out. You're not able to articulate it. I'll just let you ramble, whatever you need to say, and I'll throw in a few questions here and there. But I just feel like I have gotten so much from this myself that I need to go away and sit with and process myself. But it is, huge, Liz. Huge.
Crazy, huh? Like,
yeah.
What an incredible experience. It was. But yeah, like, I really wish I could connect with that feeling again now. It's interesting.
I'm glad you recorded or had the presence to record the bugle, because there's nothing like that on any memorial or Anzac Day. That is the thing that just goosebumps from the ground.
I'm going to text it to you now.
Oh my God. Oh, so I can listen to it before I go. Oh my God. But that is...
God. This is
just like, if we did end up making this an episode, we need to start with that. We need to take the audio from it.
Right, I've just sent it to you. Okay.
Oh my God, Liz.
Just even the sunset, it was the most magical moment. Holy shit. It really, really, really was. Yeah, anyway.
I'm so glad we did this. I'm so I'm just so glad we did
it. Yay.
Thank you. And thank you, just because if you hadn't shared it with me, like, I just feel like I got so much from that.
Good. Well, I'm glad. I mean, just shows you, like, that day, after the day of it happening, I was just like, fuck, this type of stuff's just so incredible.
It is. It's fucking mind blowing. Like that's it. And like,
unbelievable.
Yeah, because I went to bed that night because your post, even I ended up going back to a song. The band plays Waltzing Matilda, which is it's an Australian song, but Irish bands, Irish artists play it all the time. And it was like, I read through the lyrics again. And as I was reading it, I was, embodying the feeling. And even I did some research that day that it was like to just, because I couldn't remember the figures, and like, I don't remember figures offhand, but, remembering the figures or researching the figures of how many had died, how many Irish people, because like normally, I guess the Allied forces or British, like, I mean, the Australians get called out, the New Zealanders get called, but they don't necessarily call out the other, nationalities who would have. And I feel that, again, you triggered in me a deeper level of honoring and respect. So even just going through listening to that song, writing my own post on Facebook, educating people, because I didn't just do the least we forget and put something. It was like I even remembered, most of the people I know wouldn't even know. Like I didn't know what ANZAC Day was before I came to Australia. So for me, putting in about, for those who don't know, here's what ANZAC Day is. And then putting in some of the figures around, and of course they're always different depending on what website you look at, but it's the order of magnitude of how many souls were lost. And again, for me, it was still, that's just Gallipoli. That's not, but like ANZAC Day is so much more than that. Like for Australians, for New Zealanders, it's so much more than that. Yeah. Just the ripple effect of, and tying it back as I was going through that, tying back that grief and loss that is inherently held in Irish people. The fact that I was, thinking about Belgium and going past the concentration camps. Like, there's no country that hasn't been touched by war and trauma in some way, and energy of places in the land hold that. Are you okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm great.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
good.
I'm
good.
Great.
Yeah. Because I just wanted to check in, because that was huge.
Yeah, that was good. Really good.
Oh my God. That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.